rock duck.
So, I bet you thought that human farms don't exist. Well, unfortunately they do. Now, we have metaphorical human farms. And ironically, doing basic research to just get some visuals and some, I don't even know where to go with this. I was just looking for some humoric reference for a quick visual, and what I got was more than I bargained for. It was reality, and the reality is there are really human farms, and that scared the crap out of me. And if it scares the crap out of you, then stay tuned because it's all coming up next. Okay, so initially I was just going to talk about this subject contextually, right? And figuratively, that humans are by natural location of where they're born and by time and place are put into a farm. Don't believe me? What is your accent? Can you tell someone that's not from around there by their accent? And if so, I bet you can also define that accent to a certain human farm. Now, the powers that be like to call them states, countries, what have you. But at the end of the day, we're all just brought up like little, growth, little things, biological specimens just outgrowing from the planet. And depending on our locale, depending on how we're raised, depending on what we do in those areas. Obviously, in Canada, under snow and cooler environment, you will proceed a different life than growing up in Florida, as opposed to Brazil, as opposed to Germany, as opposed to Russia, as opposed to Saudi Arabia, as opposed to Iran, as opposed to Iraq, as opposed to all these great places across the country. The planet. Our planet. The human planet. There's only one human species. It is us. There are no races. There's only one race. There's only one human race. That is us. It is our planet. Anything to tell you otherwise would be to divide us. And confined within that planet are continents, and confined within those continents are countries, and confined within those countries are either states or provinces, and confined within those are locales or cities, counties. It all starts from the tippy top and dwindles down. But at the end of the day, we're only one planet. We're only one species. We're only one race. The human race. This is ours. Now, according to the farm that you grew up in, will determine your beliefs. If you grew up in Iraq or Iran, especially right now, we see how they are teaching from birth their children, their offspring, to hate another region of this planet that can only do one thing. And that one thing is the genocide of the human race. Is that what we really want to propagate? And in return, Israel's children are taught the same thing. In America, they're taught to hate certain people depending on where they're from and the region you grew up in. Blacks are taught to hate whites. Why is this? All of this is contrary to unification and uniting us as a single unified planet, which is what I thought the United Nations was created to do. But it has failed us in every way. It serves the elite, not the people. If you don't believe you are raised in a farm, try to leave it. Now, they have no problem letting in what they want to let in because it is their farm to do so with. But try to get out. More importantly, try to go somewhere that maybe you are not supposedly allowed to go. In another farm, or even within the confines of the farm you are at. There might be off-limit places. What about we the people? How could anything be off-limits? How could anything on this planet be off-limits to you, to me, to all of us? We are all earth mutts, children of the children of the children. We are the inheritors of this planet. And are we going to allow a false hatred to divide us continuously for our children and their children and their children? Or are we going to change the dialogue so that this planet can have unification for all? Since there is only one human race. So I think by now we all grasp the metaphorical concept, conceptualizing theoretically how we are all in farms, human farms, based on locale and time and place. But like I said in the beginning of this, I came across information, articles, and other things, and I will leave links here, and I'll put the article up so y'all can read along with me, of real human farming. And that's the scary part. So, you know, it's not like we all don't know that certain things go on, and we do. But when it's put right in front of your face and you see it for yourself, it really is an eye-opener, a mind-opener. So this article comes from United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And disclaimer, I am not Catholic. Do not represent the church. That's not me. So I am just reading you this article. It just happens to be them that wrote it. And here's the article, Farming Humans for Fun and Profit by Richard M. Dorflinger, written January 20th, 2004. So this dates back 20 years. Farming fetuses for body parts, human, animal hybrids, putting unborn humans in animal wombs, buying and selling human embryos, patenting human beings. Chapter headings for a science fiction pot boiler? No. Just a typical day at the office for members of the President's Council on Bioethics. On January 16th, the President's Council released a draft report that deserves attention from all Americans concerned about the use and abuse of science. Its title, Biotechnology and Public Policy. Biotechnologies affecting the beginnings of human life is far from exciting, but its subject matter will put no one to sleep. Practices like those listed above, says the Council, are abuses, pure and simple, and should be banned to protect the dignity of human procreation. One such practice, though it sounds like science fiction, is as timely as this month's headlines and shows the need to prohibit the transfer of a human embryo produced ex vivo to a woman's uterus for any purpose other than to attempt to produce a live born child. The Council calls attention to the reality of this threat, noting that a number of animal experiments using assisted reproductive technologies have shown the value of initiating pregnancies purely for the purposes of research on embryonic and fetal development, or for the purpose of securing tissues or organs for transplant. While this may have some place in animal research, its expansion to humans would be horrific. A woman and her womb, says the report, should not be regarded or used as a piece of laboratory equipment, as an incubator for growing research materials, or as a field for growing and harvesting body parts. The Council's unanimous voice in opposition to fetus farms is especially noteworthy given the fact that the majority of its members are pro-choice on abortion, and among the members there is a variety of opinions on cloning and other matters. Obviously, the Council's report comes not a moment too soon. On January 4th, New Jersey enacted a new law on human cloning that clears a path for fetus farms. It encourages the cloning of human embryos for research, but bans cultivating a cloned human through the egg, embryo, fetal, and newborn stages. In other words, in New Jersey, it is okay to create and gestate human embryos all you want, as long as you kill them for their cells and organs before they can be born. The bill's language is no accident. The National Biotechnology Industry Organization has urged its state affiliates to enact such laws. Bio's next target is Delaware, where a similar bill has been approved by the state Senate and is poised for House action. This bill, endorsed by the director of the University of Delaware's Biotechnology Institute, supports research in human cloning, but bans implanting a cloned embryo in a womb for gestation and subsequent birth. Implanting with the intent of aborting and harvesting of tissue would be allowed. Human cloning's slippery slope toward complete dehumanization of human beings will not stop until the U.S. Senate passes Senator Brownback's complete ban on human cloning. In the meantime, surely almost everyone can agree that proposals like those in New Jersey and Delaware demean the humanity of women and children alike. The Council's report can be found at Mr. Dorflinger is Deputy Director of the Secretariat for Pro-Life Activities, U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Wow. Wow. But wait, there's more. This from MIT Technology Review, Biotechnology and Health. Health is what they call it. Human-animal chimeras are gestating on U.S. research farms. Wow. Braving a funding ban put in place by America's top health agency, some U.S. research centers are moving ahead with attempts to grow human tissue inside pigs and sheep with the goal of creating hearts, livers, or other organs needed for transplants. The effort to incubate organs in farm animals is ethically charged because it involves adding human cells to animal embryos in ways that could blur the line between species. Last September, in a reversal of earlier policy, the National Institute of Health announced it would not support studies involving such human-animal chimeras until it had reviewed the scientific and social implications more closely. The agency, in a statement, said it was worried about the chance that animals' cognitive state could be altered if they ended up with human brain cells. The NIH action was triggered after it learned that scientists had begun such experiments with support from other funding sources, including from California's State Stem Cell Agency. The human-animal mixtures are being created by injecting human stem cells into days-old animal embryos, then gestating these in female livestock. Wow, guys, this is just amazing. Based on interviews with three teams, two 2 in California and 1 in Minnesota, MIT Technology Review estimates that about 20 pregnancies of pig-human or sheep-human chimeras have been established during the last 12 months in the U.S. Though so far no scientific paper describing the work has been published, and none of the animals were brought to term. Again, just like in the other article, they seem to have no problem with using animals, whether human or other farm animals, to gestate and biologically create a new life form and have that life form get to term only to kill it. I think this is why the abortion laws are so important, and why the right seems to always want to bring up these full-term abortions, and the left goes, well, that just doesn't really happen. Well, you're right. If it's a normal person with a normal pregnancy, they don't really think like that. But to allow that law would allow these things to happen, wouldn't it? Would allow these so-called doctors to continue with their mad scientist experiments. But we'll continue reading. The extent of research was disclosed in part during presentation made at NIH's Maryland campus in November at the agency's request. One researcher, Juan Carlos Ispizua Belmonte of the Salk Institute, showed unpublished data on more than a dozen pig embryo containing human cells. Another from the University of Minnesota provided photographic evidence, guys, of a 62-day-old pig fetus in which the addition of human cells appeared to have reversed a congenital eye defect. The experiments rely on a cutting-edge fusion of technologies, including recent breakthroughs in stem cell biology and gene editing technologies. By modifying genes, scientists can now easily change the DNA in pig or sheep embryos so that they are genetically incapable of forming a specific tissue. Then by adding stem cells from a person, basically a human, they hope the human cells will take over the job of forming the missing organ, which could then be harvested from the animal for use in a transplant operation for a human being. We can make an animal without a heart. We have engineered pigs that lack skeletal muscles and blood vessels, says Daniel Garrett. Now that's just scary. A cardiologist who leads a chimera project at the University of Minnesota. While such pigs aren't viable, they can develop properly if a few cells are added from a normal pig embryo. Gary says he's already melded 2 pigs in this way and recently won a $1.4 million grant from the United States Army, which funds some biomedical research. Now, what would the Army want with chimeras? To try to grow human hearts in swine. This just gets more ridiculous by the moment. Because chimeras could provide a new supply of organs for needy patients and also lead to basic discoveries, researchers including Gary say they intend to press forward despite the NIH position. In November, he was one of 11 authors who published a letter criticizing the agency for creating a threat to progress that cast a shadow of negativity on their work. Yeah, you think? The worry is that the animals might turn out to be a little too human for comfort, say ending up with human reproductive cells, patches of people hair, or just higher intelligence. We are not near the island of Dr. Moreau. I believe we are, but science moves fast, NIH ethicist David Resnick said during the agency's November meeting. The specter of an intelligent mouse stuck in a laboratory somewhere screaming, "I want to get out," would be very troubling to people. The chance of an animal gaining human consciousness is probably slim. Their brains are just too different and much smaller. Even so, as a precaution, researchers working with farm animal chimeras haven't yet permitted any to be born, but instead are again, they're not letting them be born. This is disgusting. They're creating life just to kill it, but instead are collecting fetuses in order to gather preliminary information about how great the contribution of human cells is to the animals' bodies. Now, guys, I'm going to stop right there before we continue reading, because I want you to put this, think of everything as a big dot-to-dot picture, and this is just one dot in the bigger picture. And when you add in the other dots with why they're poisoning us with food and making us sick, and then they want to give us the antidote, right? That here's your prescription, here's how you get fixed, here's all you got to do is take my, happy pill. They're going to copyright all of this stuff. It's going to be trademarked, copyright, patented. You won't be able to go get this stuff. In other words, to be the perfect human in the future, you will have to buy the copyrighted, patented parts. That's what this is leading to. This is disgusting. Continuing on. Hiromitsu Nakoachi, a stem cell biologist at Stanford University, began trying to make human sheep chimeras this year. He says that so far the contribution by human cells to the animals' bodies appears to be relatively small. If the extent of human cells is 0.5%, it's very unlikely to get thinking pigs or standing sheep. And again, that's not where my issue is. It's with the copywriting and trademarking of future what is to be anything that is per human. You won't even be able to get we'll get into that discussion on another podcast. He says, but if it's large, like 40%, oh, okay, so they have done larger, then we'd have to do something about that. Other kinds of human-animal chimeras are already widely used in scientific research, including humanized mice endowed with a human immune system. Such animals are created by adding bits of liver and thymus from a human fetus collected after an abortion to a mouse after it is born. The new line of research goes further because it involves placing human cells into animal embryo at the very earliest stage, when it is a sphere of just a dozen cells in a laboratory dish. This process, called embryo complementation, is significant because the human cells can multiply, specialize, and potentially contribute to any part of the animal's body as it develops. In 2010, while working in Japan, Nakauchi used the embryo complementation method to show he could generate mice with a pancreas made entirely of rat cells. If it works as it does in rodents, he says, we should be able to have a pig with a human organ. Although Nakauchi was a star scientist, Japanese regulators were slow to approve his idea for chimeras, a pig man, as critics put it, and by 2013, Nakauchi decided to move to the United States where no federal law restrictions, right? Where no federal law restricts the creation of chimeras. Holy shit. Stanford was able to recruit him with the help of a $6 million grant from the California Institute of Regenerative Medicine, a state agency set up a decade ago to bypass political interference from Washington. While the NIH funding ban does affect Nakauchi, it has put researchers under pressure to explain the purpose of their work. I want to show you some chimeras, Nakauchi said, when I visited his laboratory at Stanford last month. He opened the door to a small room containing incubators where the chimeric embryos are stored. Stored? Or do you mean living? Because an early embryo is almost invisible to the human eye. The room houses special microscopes equipped with microneedles used to inject the human cells into them. The type of human cells being added are called iPS cells, made from their skin or blood, chemically reprogrammed into more versatile stem cells using a Nobel Prize winning formula developed by one of Nakauchi's Japanese colleagues. Nakauchi says that as a matter of convenience, most of the iPS cells his team has been placing into animal embryos are made from his own blood. That's just sick. Since recruiting volunteers involves too much paperwork. Are you shitting me? Are you seriously? At the level of sophistication that these people really think they're at, to be able to cross-pollinate humans with pigs and humans with sheep, and they're worried about paperwork? Think about that. What else would they want to do to bypass paperwork because they just want to do it? We need a special consent if we're injecting into animals, he says sheepishly. Yeah, no shit. So I try to use my own. The word chimera comes from the creature of Greek mythology, part lion, part goat, and part snake. Nakauchi says most people at first imagine his chimeras are monsters too. But he says attitudes change if he can explain his proposal. One reason is that if his iPS cells develop inside an animal, the resulting tissue will actually be his. Now that's just really sick. A kind of perfectly matched replacement part. Desperately ill people and on organ waiting list might someday order a chimera and wait less than a year for their own custom organ to be ready. And that's what I'm saying. They're going to patent the process, patent everything, get your DNA, grow one specifically for you, and only those that can afford to stay alive forever, because they can continuously replace their body parts, will continue to live forever. I really don't see much risk to society, he says. Well, I just told you about the risk. Before that can happen, scientists will have to prove that human cells can really multiply and contribute effectively to the bodies of farm animals. That could be challenging, since unlike rats and mice, which are fairly close genetically, humans and pigs last shared an ancestor nearly 9 million years ago. To find out, researchers in 2014 decided to begin impregnating farm animals with human-animal embryos, says Pablo Ross, a veterinarian and developmental biologist at the University of California, Davis, where some of the animals are being housed. Ross says at Davis he has transferred about 6 sets of pig-human embryos into sows in collaboration with the Salk Institute, and established another 8 or 10 pregnancies of sheep-human embryos with Nakauchi. Another 3 dozen pig transfers have taken place outside the United States, he says. These early efforts aren't yet to make organs, says Ross, but more to determine the ideal conditions for generating human-animal chimeras. The studies at Davis began only after a review by 3 different ethics committees, and even then, he says, the university decided to be cautious and limit the time the animals will be allowed to develop to just 28 days for a pig, and a pig's born in 114 days. By then, the embryonic pig is only half an inch long, though that's developed enough to check if human cells are contributing to its rudimentary organs. We don't want to grow them to stages we don't need to, since that would be more controversial. Well, how nice of them, says Ross. My view is that the contribution of human cells is going to be minimal, maybe 3%, maybe 5%, but what if the contribution is 100% of the brain? What if the embryo that develops is mostly human? It's something that we don't expect, but no one has done this experiment, so we can't rule it out. And this article is written by Antonio Regalado. Now, he ends it with its no one has done this experiment. No one knows that, because like they stated in the article themselves, they are doing certain things to bypass the rules and regulations. And so if you're going to bypass the law and bypass rules and regulations, why wouldn't you? What else wouldn't you do? If your curiosity to do something out exceeds your confidence in the law, or your morality towards the law, whatever that law is for whatever country, then you are obviously going to just do whatever you want, and you will find a way and a means to do it. There's no telling what kind of human farms exist out there at this point in time. These articles go back. These are old articles. And And we know how much technology has advanced in every other area, so why wouldn't this area also have advanced? Alright guys, well, that's all I've got for you right now. This is part of the series, The Anti-Human Agenda, and I hope you please like it and share it. I'm not real keen on super duper videos and with all the bells and whistles. I have some ideas and I have some things I need to get out, so I'm going to put this series together, and if you guys are able to get through it with my boredom, then I appreciate it, and I thank you guys so much for listening to what I have to say. But I'm going to try to expose things without the hype, without the political left or right slant, because all that does is create division amongst us, the human species. There's only one human race, and I am here to unite it, not to divide it.